Only a couple of days to go now until the year is over, and if it had been anything like 2017, I'd be posting my top 10 pictures on Facebook now. However, all things considered, 2018 has been a good year for me as a photographer. I've not only made tremendous progress in taking and editing photographs, but in recording and editing video too. So instead of dropping a post on Facebook, I decided to make this into a video. I hope you'll enjoy it. In July, the drought had a firm grip on the country already. Clouds were a rare sight, and they'd usually appear around midday, when light is harshest, only to disappear well before sunset again. If there's one thing I learned in 2018, it's that light can make or break a picture, and trying to shoot in the open around noon is probably the dumbest idea a landscape photographer can come up with. However, there had been hay bales in the fields for a couple of days already, and I figured it wouldn't be long now before they were gone. Then one day we got these beautiful puffy clouds against the blue sky, and I knew at once that it was now or never. So I grabbed my camera and started looking for a composition, all the while watching the sky and hoping the clouds would still be there when I was ready to press the shutter button. I got lucky. In winter, when the days grow shorter, there's no way of shooting landscapes during the week, at least not with a daytime job. I usually resort to shooting car trails and such on these occasions, but this day I decided I'd shoot the local art museum. The Mater, designed by famous architect Frank Gehry, is an odd building to behold with its slanted walls and twisted sheet metal cladding. In other words, just the thing I needed for an interesting picture. I had seen a plethora of shots on the web, and most of them had been taken with a wide-angle lens from quite a distance to get all of the building and its annexes into the frame. I didn't want to take after them, which meant I had to go in much closer, so the telephoto lens was not an option. In order to still get lots of elements into the frame, I picked an ultra-wide lens, which had the additional advantage of exaggerating the twisted structures even more. After 1 hour of kneeling, lying flat on the ground and looking at it from every possible angle, I pressed the shutter button. Sunrise was still an hour away when I was hiking through the forest to take a picture that I thought I had pre-visualized, already taken half a year ago in fact. The previous shot was poorly executed though, and I was going to do better this morning. I arrived at the designated spot with plenty of time on my hands, so I checked the surroundings to see if there might be an even better composition nearby. When the sun finally peeked out from under the horizon, I realized that there wouldn't be a better picture to be had. The light was different and the scene looked bland. It had taken me an hour to get to this location, so I wasn't quite ready to give up yet. However, there was no picture here, no matter how hard I tried, and all the while the sun was rising higher and higher. So I caved in, packed my things, and was on my way back to the car. When I got back on the path, I looked to my left and stopped. There was a picture to be had here after all. My time in the Lake District was almost up. There had been no waterfalls worth shooting, and I grabbed at every straw to get some decent pictures to show for. When I got to Blea Tarn, I got that already familiar feeling of frustration again. This tarn had dried up considerably as well. At least there were some water lilies to take advantage of, and I figured a shot with a wide-angle lens and getting real close to the foremost lily. That in turn required me to actually step into the tarn and set the tripod up in the water. The shore was a muddy mess, but if wading right through it was what it took to get a decent picture here, I was willing to do it. Back at the B&B and sifting through the footage, I couldn't help feeling disappointed with the outcome. The picture was way too busy. I had tried to get too much stuff into the frame that didn't belong. So I cropped generously. On one of those rare occasions, when the sky was actually dramatic in the Lake District, I was making for Blea Tarn in Little Langdale. Every now and then sunlight would fall through a crack in the clouds and onto the fells in the distance. It was breathtaking to watch, and I was confident I'd get some fantastic pictures in this area. However, the bugs were also quite fond of this location, and turned the shoot into an actual challenge. The presence of a body of water nearby and temperatures around 20 degrees Celsius didn't exactly improve things. So I put on a jacket to stop them from biting me. I'd rather get soaked in sweat than having to pay attention to these little monsters. Back at the B&B, I immediately started editing the picture and thought this was the best picture I had shot in the past 2 years. Little did I know then about what was yet to come. In January, nothing hinted yet at what would turn out to be the warmest year for the past 130 years. On the contrary, the cold was biting and an icy wind made matters even worse. Quite often my hands would go numb holding the camera, and I had to invest in a pair of electric hand warmers to be able to keep going. I had run out of ideas of what to shoot in the neighborhood, and there was no point in going to look farther away from home, because night would have fallen by the time I got there. This evening I was determined to shoot the sunset, but there wasn't much time left. Once the sun is low in the sky, things appear to speed up, and before you know, the light is gone. It wasn't any different this evening, and I had to make up my mind quickly. My hands, now having taken on a bluish hue and hurting like mad, emphasized that point. In the distance, across the road, I could make out a couple of trees, and without giving too much thought to composition, I pressed the shutter button a couple of times. If there was any such thing as a regular visitor of the Extenstein in Germany, that would probably be me. I've lost count of the amount of pictures I've taken at this location, yet none of them featured a sunset or a dramatic sky. So another visit was in order, but this time around, I decided to record a time-lapse video to make it worth my while. For quite a while it looked as if there wouldn't be anything special about the impending sunset yet again. Clouds appeared and vanished all the time, and the sun's light didn't seem to be able to hit them at just the right angle. 1 hour had passed already and I was about to pack up again, when I noticed the sky started to change color ever so slowly. Persistence had finally paid off. I remember when I was a kid, we'd always have snow in winter. We'd go sledding after school and not return home before evening. Nowadays, there's hardly any snow to be had, at least where I live. So, in order to have snow in your image, you need to go where they actually have snow. I had spotted a picture of the Brocken barn, making its way through the snow a couple of days before, and this seemed to be just the thing that would make for a great picture. Climbing up the Brocken proved to be quite the challenge, because of the sheer weight of my backpack. You could argue that it would have been wiser to go by Brocken barn, and you'd be right. When I finally reached the top of the Brocken, there was dense fog, and it was immediately clear that there was no picture to be had up here. After a short lunch break, I was on my way down again. Luckily, I had spotted a great location for an image on the way up, and that's where I was headed now. It was early afternoon when I arrived at that spot, and there would be sufficient light for about an hour or two at most. My camera was set up to point to the left side of the track, which featured a nice curve and made for an interesting composition. After a while, the train's whistle sounded. I got ready to take the shot and the Brocken barn entered the scene from the right. And again. I started worrying about the light when suddenly the whistle sounded for a third time. I hammered the shutter button. A place straight out of a fairy tale is what best describes Castle in Germany, and it's usually buzzing with people from all over the world for exactly that reason. I went there in late December 2017 and, although I got some great shots, there was certainly room for improvement. I already knew back then that I would return one day. Then summer 2018 hit and I couldn't be bothered to make the 4-hour trip, because I had a feeling that Castle might look just as bad as any other landscape in Germany around that time. It would take another couple of months to change my mind. I arrived at the castle early in the morning, about an hour or two before sunrise, and started recording a time-lapse video. I didn't get the sunrise I had been hoping for, but a couple of breathtaking blue-hour pictures. Who needs sunrises anyway? A wise man once said, in order to take interesting pictures, you need to be standing in front of interesting stuff. He didn't mention, though, what he considered to be interesting stuff. That is for us photographers to find out. For me, it clicked when I was taking a break in the shade of a tree in the Lake District. Making my way from the parking lot in Ambleside towards Loughrick Fell, I had to take frequent breaks, because, you know, I have this habit of bringing all of my equipment, and on a warm day like this one, it usually doesn't take long before I have to admit to having made a mistake. A couple of miles in, I spotted a lone tree ahead, and knowing I still had some ways to go, I decided to take another breather. My shoulders were hurting from the weight, so I got the backpack off my back, if only for a few minutes. While stretching and walking about for a bit, lightning struck. There was a picture here. I quickly walked out of the shade and had a closer look at the tree. It was the most beautiful scene I had seen in the Lake District until then. I had completely forgotten what I had come here for in the first place, but that didn't matter now. There wouldn't be a better picture to be had here anyway. Well, that pretty much wraps up the year 2018. I wish you and your loved ones a Happy New Year 2019. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more of this content, please consider subscribing. And as always, good light. Bye.